The millionaire's autistic son was screaming uncontrollably mid-flight, until a poor black boy stepped in and stunned everyone on the plane. The plane had been in the air for nearly 2 hours, cutting through the clouds as the late afternoon sun streamed lazily through the oval windows. The cabin was quiet at first, passengers lost in their own worlds, some scrolling on their phones, others dozing lightly, a few immersed in the subtle hum of in-flight conversations. But that calm shattered in an instant. It started with a scream, high-pitched, piercing, and full of panic. Heads turned sharply, eyes widening in shock. From the rear of the first-class section, a boy, no older than 12, was thrashing in his seat, his small body rigid with tension. His cries were raw, almost unbearable, echoing down the aisle and bouncing off the walls. The boy's father, a man whose presence alone commanded attention, sat frozen beside him. His tailored suit, crisp and immaculate, made him stand out among the other passengers. He was the image of wealth, the kind of man who always seemed untouchable, yet at that moment even he looked helpless. His hands moved in a futile attempt to soothe his son, but the child recoiled, screaming louder, tears streaming freely. Flight attendants rushed over, their faces a mixture of concern and professional composure. "Sir, can we help calm him?" one asked gently. Another knelt beside the boy, offering toys and soft words, but it was no use. The more they tried, the more agitated he became. Meanwhile, the other passengers began to stir uneasily. Murmurs rippled through the cabin. A mother with a young child clutched her son tightly, shielding his ears. An elderly man in the aisle seat pinched the bridge of his nose, clearly frustrated. A couple of teenagers whispered to each other, half out of curiosity and half out of discomfort. It was chaos, and yet, paradoxically, the affluent father remained rigid, almost frozen, as if the situation were slipping through his hands. From the back of the plane, a different energy emerged. A young black boy, barely 16, sat quietly in the economy section. He had no flashy clothes, no air of entitlement, just a simple hoodie and jeans, worn shoes scuffed from long days of work. His backpack rested at his feet, stuffed with textbooks, a few sketchbooks, and a worn-out lunchbox. Unlike the other passengers, his attention was fixed entirely on the scene unfolding ahead, his eyes sharp, calculating, and steady. He wasn't wealthy, he wasn't influential, but there was something in him, a calm determination, a quiet confidence, that made him stand out even in the chaos. While the plane erupted with tension, he seemed almost immune, as if he had been waiting for something like this his whole life. The boy's father finally stood, calling out sharply, his voice filled with both desperation and authority. "Enough, sit down." But the child ignored him entirely, screaming louder, fists clenching, legs kicking. Flight attendants tried to intervene again, their words drowned by the shrill cries. Panic was spreading. A stewardess whispered hurriedly to a colleague, "If this keeps up, we might have to consider an emergency landing." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, sending a ripple of fear through the passengers. The young black boy rose from his seat, moving slowly, carefully, weaving through the tight rows of economy passengers. He wasn't pushing or shoving, he wasn't demanding attention. He just moved with purpose, eyes never leaving the struggling child. Whispers followed him. "Who is that kid? Is he going to help? He's just a kid himself." But there was a strange magnetism to him. The way he approached the scene suggested he had a plan, a sense of intuition that went beyond his years. Passengers leaned forward in their seats, some with curiosity, some with skepticism. The wealthy father's stern expression shifted to one of confusion. He had never seen anyone move through a first-class cabin with such ease or authority. The autistic boy's screams intensified, echoing sharply. It was a sound that made stomachs churn and hearts race. People instinctively covered their ears, but the young black boy didn't flinch. Instead, he knelt down at the boy's eye level, speaking softly, almost whispering. His words were careful, measured, but there was a subtle authority in his tone. For a moment, nothing happened. The autistic boy continued to scream, his body trembling uncontrollably. The father looked on, powerless, his face pale. Flight attendants exchanged worried glances, unsure if intervention was even possible. The cabin was tense, every passenger holding their breath. Then slowly the boy's cries began to falter. His body, still rigid, seemed to respond to the calm presence before him. Passengers began to notice the shift, a microsecond, almost imperceptible at first but growing. The young black boy's voice, gentle yet firm, wove through the noise, a strange calm amidst the storm. The millionaire father's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Here was a child who had nothing but a kind heart and remarkable courage, doing what his elite entourage of flight attendants and professionals could not achieve. The power in the cabin had shifted silently, invisibly, yet undeniably. Passengers held their breath as the autistic boy's tension began to unravel, muscle by muscle. His fists unclenched, his sobs softened, and slowly, hesitantly, he turned his gaze toward the young boy kneeling beside him. It was the first real connection he had made in the past hour, a bridge across fear, frustration, and isolation. The young black boy's eyes met the father's briefly. There was no arrogance, no challenge, only a quiet assurance. It was a statement without words. I can handle this. The millionaire's face flushed with a mix of relief, disbelief, and perhaps a twinge of shame. All the money in the world couldn't command the peace this boy seemed to summon effortlessly. As the cabin gradually settled, the tension that had gripped the plane began to dissipate. Passengers exhaled collectively, some whispering their amazement. Flight attendants, though still vigilant, relaxed just enough to allow a small, incredulous smile. It was a scene that no one would forget, not the screams, not the chaos, but the calm and courage of one unexpected hero. By the time the plane leveled out into a smooth cruising altitude, the autistic boy was no longer crying. He clung lightly to his father's hand, still uncertain but calmer, and the young black boy returned to his seat, quietly observing as if nothing extraordinary had happened. Yet, everyone in the cabin knew it had. Whispers traveled like wildfire. Who was that kid? How did he do that? He saved the flight. In that moment, status, wealth, and privilege meant nothing. All that mattered was courage, empathy, and the rare kind of instinct that can change everything in seconds. And none of it could have been predicted. Not by the passengers, not by the father, not even by the flight attendants. Because sometimes the most extraordinary heroes are those you least expect. Quiet, unnoticed, and utterly remarkable. The cabin remained tense. Every passenger seemed frozen in place, unwilling to look away, their eyes darting between the screaming boy and the small figure approaching him with calm confidence. The wealthy father's face was pale, knuckles white as he gripped the armrests, powerless against the storm his son was creating. Flight attendants tried again, offering toys, soft blankets, even water. The autistic boy rejected everything violently, throwing his water cup across the aisle, sending it spilling near an older woman's lap. The plane shuddered slightly as the turbulence outside mirrored the chaos inside. Whispers grew louder. Why won't anyone calm him? Should they restrain him? This is getting out of hand. Meanwhile, the young black boy carefully inched closer. He knelt down near the screaming child, speaking softly, almost like a secret. He didn't shout or panic. He simply kept his voice low and steady. Passengers craned their necks to see, skeptical but drawn to the unusual calm he radiated. The autistic boy's father, desperate now, bent down, trying to restrain his son gently. "Please stop. Calm down," he pleaded, his voice breaking. The boy shrieked louder, arching away from his father's grasp, his small body trembling violently. Flight attendants exchanged panicked glances. Some considered asking the pilot for emergency procedures. Then the young black boy made a bold move. He extended a hand slowly, inching it toward the child. There was no rush, no pressure, just a steady, silent promise that he meant no harm. For the first time, the autistic boy froze, eyes wide, staring at the hand. The cabin seemed to hold its breath. A flight attendant whispered urgently, "Do you think it will work?" Another passenger muttered, "He's just a kid. He can't do this." But the young boy's confidence never wavered. He leaned slightly closer, keeping his voice calm, repeating words the child might understand, phrases soft and rhythmical, almost like a chant. Minutes stretched endlessly. Every second felt like a lifetime as the autistic boy's cries wavered between raw panic and tentative curiosity. His father, exhausted, sank back into his seat, watching helplessly. Passengers whispered among themselves, some holding back tears, others gripping their phones in disbelief. Suddenly the boy's movement slowed. His hands unclenched slightly. His body stopped thrashing as violently. There was a pause, brief, fragile, but it was enough to make the entire cabin tense with anticipation. The young black boy mirrored that pause, remaining still, patient, letting the child set the pace. He whispered words of encouragement, his tone unwavering. "It's okay. You're safe. I'm here." Something clicked in the autistic boy. His breathing slowed, his eyes focused, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, he reached toward the young boy's outstretched hand. Gasps rippled through the cabin. The millionaire father sat frozen, disbelief written all over his face. Flight attendants whispered to each other, "I've never seen anything like this." Even other passengers who had been tense and anxious leaned forward in fascination. The plane itself seemed to hold its breath as the autistic boy made tentative contact. A quiet murmur of relief spread, but the danger wasn't over yet. The child could still pull away, scream again, or panic at any moment. The young black boy remained calm, letting the boy's pace guide him, keeping his voice soft and steady. Another attempt, a gentle pat on the hand, a soft word. The boy's body relaxed fractionally more. He stopped screaming outright, though quiet sobs escaped. Eyes locked, a connection formed that was stronger than authority, money, or status. The cabin seemed to exhale as tension slowly lifted, but the full resolution had not yet come. The millionaire father's face shifted through disbelief, awe, and something he hadn't expected: humility. He realized that no amount of wealth, power, or control could have achieved what this young boy was doing effortlessly. All he had done was approach with patience, empathy, and courage. Every second counted. Every soft word, every measured gesture from the young boy built on the previous one. The autistic child's screams were now a quiet whimper, still trembling but no longer overwhelming. The rising action reached its peak as everyone realized that the plane's fate, calm, order, or complete chaos, rested on the small, unexpected hero. Passengers held their breath, waiting for the final breakthrough. Flight attendants hovered nervously, unsure whether to intervene or step back. The father's hands were clenched in his lap, knuckles white, as he watched silently. And in that fragile, high-stakes moment it was clear. The next move would change everything. The autistic boy's trembling hands hovered in the air for a heartbeat. Then slowly, hesitantly, he placed his tiny hand in the young black boy's outstretched one. The cabin was silent, every passenger frozen, eyes wide with disbelief. It was as if time had slowed. Soft, calm words continued to flow from the young boy. "It's okay. You're safe. I've got you." Each word seemed to work like magic, unraveling the panic thread by thread. The autistic child's breathing steadied. His cries turned into small, shaky sobs, then faded to quiet sniffles. The millionaire father watched, his mouth slightly open, unable to comprehend what was happening. Flight attendants exchanged stunned glances. Even the passengers in economy, many of whom had feared chaos, leaned forward, whispering in amazement. And then it happened. The autistic boy finally looked up, eyes locking with the young black boy. There was a moment of recognition, a spark of trust that no money could buy, no status could command. The little boy nodded slightly, a tentative smile breaking through the fear. The entire cabin seemed to release its collective breath. People clapped softly, some cheering quietly. The father's hand trembled as he reached to touch his son's shoulder, whispering words of gratitude. The young boy simply smiled, modest, almost shy, as he returned to his seat. He didn't seek praise, he hadn't come for recognition. He had come to help. Passengers whispered among themselves, "Did you see that? That kid saved him." I can't believe it, just a kid. The plane, once filled with tension and panic, now hummed with relief and awe. For the millionaire father, the lesson was clear. No amount of wealth could replace patience, empathy, and courage. And for the young black boy who had nothing but his heart and instinct, it was a quiet victory, one that changed not just the autistic boy's flight, but the hearts of everyone on board. The plane continued smoothly through the sky, the sun dipping below the horizon, painting golden light across the cabin. A single, small act had transformed the chaos into calm, proving that sometimes the most powerful heroes are those you least expect.